Hi, everybody. It is Katie Phang. Yes, I know I am not Mary Trump. Almost every day, I'd like to think that I could be Mary Trump, but unfortunately, she's under the weather and she's asked me to pinch hit. So I said, are you kidding me? The chance to be able to spend time with your peeps, to be able to work with your crew, and to be able to spend time with your viewers and listeners, I said, please sign me up. So first of all, everybody send some positive energy into the universe for Mary, so that she has a speedy recovery. Secondly, send some positive energy into the universe that I do a decent enough job that she decides she'll talk to me after today. All kidding aside, it's great to be here. Look, I know Mary starts every show talking about what's going on today. Candidly, some days I don't even know what day of the week it is. I have to check my phone, my watch, my computer all of the time. So we're just going to log what's happening right now. It is Wednesday, July 16th. 6:02 Eastern. And from where I sit, it's okay to not know what's going on. It's okay to kind of live in a space of what is the latest emergency, what is the latest shocking thing that is going on. Sometimes we have to be a little bit forgiving and say we just kind of have to tackle what's in front of us. Our version of triage is going to keep us sane. And in order to do that, we just kind of have to take it a little bit at a time. One of my favorite sayings is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How are we going to get through all of this? One bite at a time. So at this point, let's dive in. I couldn't think of anything more fitting than that last screen that you just saw. Where fake news goes to die, amen, Mary Trump. This is exactly the case. We all have the burden, the responsibility, but also the privilege of being truth tellers together. Who's not a truth teller? That would be convicted felon Donald Trump. Donald woke up pissy today. What else is new? And he decided that he wanted to let the entire internet know, although the majority of us really don't need to know what's rattling around inside that head of his, dementia-riddled brain of his. So his latest Truth Social missive, and what's kind of nuts is, for those of us that actually do have to read it, once again, it blames the Democrats for everything. It invokes the Russia hoax. It invokes a whole bunch of the hit parade of his kind of favorites, right, that he likes to invoke. But again, we read it here at the Mary Trump Show. We're going to spare you the worst of it, and we're just going to read a slice of it. So are you ready? Let's rock and roll. Unlike Republicans, Democrats stick together like glue. Their new scam, in all caps, is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. There it is. And my past supporters have bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker. I mean, it went on and on and on and on and on. But the word hoax, it's been resurrected. It's like you can't quit it. It's like a bad relationship this man has with the truth. And he just can't quit the lies. So he wants to say now that the Epstein files is a hoax. So, okay, do you have your piece of paper and your pen ready? Because if we're keeping track of the lies that are happening, today's lie on Wednesday, July 16th is it's a Democrat hoax. But how is it a Democrat hoax if your Attorney General, Pam Bondi, your FBI Director, Kash Patel, and your Deputy FBI guy, Dan Bingo Boingo Bongino, who, by the way, does anybody know if he's actually still gone back to the job that we as taxpayers have been paying for? Since he just peaced out last Friday after getting to a pissing match with Pam Bondi? I digress. But what were they all looking at then? Because they all said, as official members of the Trump administration, some of whom are the cabinet members, right? They've said that they've looked at the Epstein files, that there's nothing new, and that they're not going to release anything other than that doctored video, which great, intrepid reporting by Wired continues to confirm. They've been sliced together, that there are pieces missing, and that the video that's been released by Pam Bondi is a manipulated video by omission, right? So today's excuse from Donald Trump for not releasing the Epstein files is that it's a, quote, Democrat hoax and it's a scam. But here's the thing. In the rest of this Trump Truth Social thing, Donald ends up saying, though, that he's pissed off at his, quote, past supporters, and he basically says that he doesn't need them anymore. So all of these people like Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Charlie Kirk, I could go on and on, Laura Loomer. The fact that we're all kind of aligning with those folks right now, I know somebody needs to kind of, spray us with some type of disinfectant. But here's the thing. They're all calling for the transparency on these files, on these documents. And I, along with several Democrats, Democrat Ro Khanna, he tried to get that released, and the Republicans all shot it down. Tom Massey, he just filed a discharge petition with support from both parties, including Ro Khanna, because he wants to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. I mean, look at the New York Times information that we just saw. A staunch Republican like Tom Massey, who, by the way, recently has kind of been finding his spine, grateful for the small victories where we can get them. Even he's saying that we need to have transparency, and why not? I am on record saying the following. There have been multiple grand juries, state and federal. There have been at least 2 federal criminal prosecutions, one of Jeffrey Epstein, one of Ghislaine Maxwell, and we'll get back to her in a second. You've also had a state court case, which was the genesis of all of this, and that was down in Florida, in Palm Beach County. You've had civil litigation where the poor victims of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others, we'll get to that in a second, where they've had civil litigation. I mean, it's no secret that people are involved. I have now been saying on record as well over the last few days that I went back to the indictment for Ghislaine Maxwell. And if you look at a couple of the charges, it says very clearly that Ghislaine Maxwell conspired with Jeffrey Epstein, quote, and others, end quote. Who are the others? Look, I'm not even asking for the Department of Justice to prosecute this case, although it would have been great, right? What I am asking for is transparency, so the American public hopefully can put their critical thinking caps on and figure out what is in those files. And it's remarkable that the stonewalling that's happening by Donald Trump, that he hasn't figured out that it's biting him in the ass. Well, let's talk about this vote. This Tom Massey discharge petition with support, bipartisan support. If the vote happens, it's symbolic, okay? Because it's a Pyrrhic victory, because Congress can't force the Department of Justice to release the files. Ultimately, it is, and you and I both know it's not Bondi's decision, it's Trump's decision. And I think that's what we need to keep on harping. We need to let all of America know that the ultimate gatekeeper on this information is Donald Trump. And that if that information doesn't come out, then you are more than welcome to sit there and scream from the rooftops, what is he hiding? We know over decades of time that there are multiple pictures between Donald and with Jeffrey Epstein and with Ghislaine Maxwell. We've seen pictures of Donald with younger women. Strike that. Let's be blunt. With young girls, right? In pictures, right? We know that he's traveled. We know Donald has traveled on the Epstein jet. And let me be clear. We know that Democrats have done so and other Republicans. So we're all going to sit there, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I traffic in truths and evidence and facts. But in the absence of the truth, evidence, and facts, I am certainly entitled to surmise, suppose, hypothesize, and speculate over what's happening here. So politically, though, what's the capital that's being burned here while Trump refuses to disclose it, while huge MAGA land people with big mouthpieces like Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Laura Loomer? The political capital that's being burned right now, will Trump be able to resurrect it, right? Because now Speaker Mike Johnson, footnote, who has his own issues with his kid and having the porn app and all this other stuff, right? But Speaker Mike Johnson now has to figure out, how does he thread the needle of understanding that almost the entirety of the MAGA base is demanding the release of these Epstein files. Some of the loudest shit stirrers in MAGA land are demanding the release of these files. And now we have members of Congress that are demanding the release of these files. What does Mike Johnson do? We know that he adores his supreme leader, cult leader, but if you're Mike Johnson, do you want to be on the side of hiding the guilt of alleged sex traffickers and child pedophiles? I doubt it. I don't think it's very Christian of you, Mike Johnson. So there's at least 6 GOP names already on board for this discharge petition, and it could build momentum. But remember, summer recess, TikTok, even though we have people that are currently in DC working right now, summer recess could stall this whole thing out until September. But in the meantime, what does Donald do? He just does those crazy Truth Social posts thinking that we're too dumb. And MAGA, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are, because I know you love to listen to Mary, because even though you think that there's something wrong with Democrats, you know that Mary at a minimum is telling you the truth. MAGA, I'm telling you right now, you've been duped. You've been duped all of these years. So if I were you, I would scream louder for the release of the Epstein files. Okay, but here we go. I want to be able to say to you the following, which is Donald just an hour ago was asked about Laura Loomer's idea of appointing a special counsel to investigate this. And I want you to take a look and listen at what he had to say.
President Trump, would you consider appointing a special counsel to investigate the Jeffrey Epstein investigation?
I have nothing to do with it.
Oh, what was that? Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't you campaign, Donald, on an entire thing of transparency and draining the swamp always and making sure that once I'm in office, that you'll be able to see what's going on in the Epstein files? The guy is a liar. He's a walking liar. And you know what? We have to keep the pressure on. I know a lot of you, some of you, none of you are out there thinking, why are we still talking about this? We're talking about it for the victims. We're talking about it for the victims. Number one, they always deserved more and better. They always deserved at least a day in court, many of whom didn't get it. 2, I want to bring up Ghislaine Maxwell before we talk about something else. I have said now for a while that Ghislaine Maxwell should probably be in protective custody now. There is a big asterisk and question mark that's going on about the Jeffrey Epstein video. I don't know how he passed away. I'd like to look at the files. The files would be incredibly helpful, and the undoctored and unmanipulated videos would be incredibly helpful. But Ghislaine Maxwell went to trial, was found guilty, is sitting in federal prison. And isn't it remarkable? She hasn't said anything yet. Not a single thing. As a lawyer, I'll tell you right now, if I'm a criminal defense lawyer, I will have been telling her for a long time, spill the beans, mitigate your sentence, try to cut a deal for yourself that gets you out of prison. Because right now she has appealed. She's appealed her conviction and her sentence to the United States Supreme Court. And you know who's opposing it right now? The Trump administration. And listen, so clearly the Trump DOJ is not winning any favors with Ghislaine Maxwell, but she may not be saying anything because she may be terrified to say something. There are some incredibly powerful people that rubbed elbows with Jeffrey Epstein. And again, Republicans, Democrats, independents, you name it, foreign, domestic. And those people, more likely than not, have even more detailed exposure within these Epstein files. And I bet you a lot of those people are buddies of Donald, given to Donald, donors to Donald. And I bet you they don't want their dirty laundry aired. So let's see. Somebody's going to have to fold, because I'm going to tell you right now, keep the pressure on people, because this is going to end up being a much bigger deal than it already is in MAGA land. But speaking of Donald getting caught in his own mess, which is on a day ending in Y, today, when Donald met with Iran's crown prince and prime minister, he spent some time. And then, of course, he was chatting up with the press like he likes to do. And the press wanted to ask questions, but they didn't want to ask about foreign policy, because the press, I think, is hopefully getting it and realizing that they can control a little bit of the discourse with this guy. So what were the questions for the press about? They were about Jerome Powell. And it's funny because it's how surprising it is for Donald Trump that Jerome Powell actually has such a high office. Just take a listen to this.
He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed. I was surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and extended him.
Sorry, but his voice in that clip was particularly interesting. How does Donald Trump, who made Jerome Powell the Fed Reserve Chair in 2017 in his first administration, how is it possible that he didn't realize how, quote, high of an office that Jerome Powell has? You know, I kind of dig this, the voice of Donald Trump when I hear these clips here. But here's the thing. Donald never lets the truth get in the way of Donald. And so when he wants to throw a tantrum over whether or not he's able to fire Jerome Powell, you know, he's going to do it. So we're going to remind you right now, this is what Donald said about Jerome Powell before what he said today. Take a listen.
As president, there are a few decisions more important than nominating leaders of integrity and good judgment to hold trusted positions in public office. And few of those trusted positions are more important than the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Accordingly, it is my pleasure and my honor to announce my nomination of Jerome Powell to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. Congratulations, Jane.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Remember, we talked about the dementia, brain-addled Donald. Well, is he forgetting that he nominated and appointed Jerome Powell? Jerome Powell. Did he forget that he did that? Is he upset that he did that? I mean, he's clearly upset because Jerome's not doing what he wants him to do, right? Jerome Powell is basically saying, look, I have a duty to make sure that I do certain things as the Fed Reserve Chair, and it's not what Donald wants. So what's interesting is we heard the following too. So Trump is now saying, Donald's now saying that everyone around him has told him to fire Jerome, but Donald says, I'm more conservative than they are, so I'm not going to can him. Are you kidding me? So with all of the big bravado that we hear from Donald, what do we have now? We have some Trump taco. We have some Trump taco, right? What does he do? He always chickens out. But why is he having this sudden taco moment? Well, Tuesday night, while he was waving a prepared draft, allegedly, of the termination letter, the firing letter of Jerome Powell, and showing it to Republican leaders in the Oval Office, he ended up doing a survey of them. He has this letter in hand. He asked Republicans in the Oval Office, should I fire Jerome Powell? He passes around a draft of the letter to fire Powell. And what does he hear? He doesn't hear support. Can we stop for a second here and think about this? This just goes to show, this is kind of like the summary of Trump and his administration, right? Why do I say this? Because convicted felon Donald Trump can't make decisions if they are going to have bad public perception. And listen, you may tell me, Katie, you're nuts. He signed the big bullshit bill. Katie, you're nuts. He's doing these crazy tariffs. Katie, you're nuts. He's doing, listen, I get it. I understand. But the fact that the man has to take a survey before he does anything is now a huge red flag, right, for him, that he's not capable of being able to make these decisions already. So let's talk about, though, the idea of how much of an impact it would be if Jerome Powell actually gets fired. We actually have the University of Michigan's Justin Wolfers, and he has this great explanation of the impact if Powell is booted. Take a listen.
Between 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, we plummeted into a recession, and then we came back out of it by noon. There's a bit of overstatement there, but let me explain. The Wall Street Journal had the story that Trump was planning to fire Jay Powell, the Fed chair. Were he to do that, it would be a major blow to the independence of the organisation and, in fact, people's trust in the US financial system. So stocks tanked. An hour later, seeing that, Trump walked out in front of the press and said, just kidding, I have no intention of firing Jay Powell. It does sort of tell you just how important markets think the Fed's independence is for the US economy, and just what a tragic mistake it would be were we to tear it up because of one old man's grudge against a very fine public servant.
I couldn't have said it better, Justin. Thanks for that. So once Trump sees that there's real palpable, in real time, economic implications, and by the way, of course, Trump is an active participant in this market system, he chickens out, because he knows that the backlash will be even more profound if this ends up happening. But this is the quintessential example of how Donald only knows how to do one damn step, and that's the backpedal. So while Donald is changing his mind every day, every moment, every minute, can't keep up about policy, there is one thing that he's hell-bent on doing, but we're also not surprised because he's an idiot and he doesn't have the intellectual stamina to be able to appreciate the value of public broadcasting. So he is attempting to cancel billions in funding in public broadcasting, and now we are going to see a pretty interesting showdown in Congress. Why? Because there are some Republicans, I know, hold your breath, it's Lisa Murkowski, but there are some Republicans that are saying, you know what, we have to draw a line somewhere, and the removal of funding for NPR, PBS, et cetera, doesn't make sense. So here we go. Check what's happening out, and we're going to bring up a slide for you to check out. The Senate is weighing a $9 billion rescissions package. So it's going to claw back funds that were already approved by Congress for public broadcasting, foreign aid, and global health. And what's the excuse? DOGE. DOGE is the reason why they're doing it. But I want to underscore something I just said. This is already approved by Congress. Congress, you're a co-equal branch of government. Grow a pair and tell Donald no. Why are you letting Donald hijack your job? Why are you letting him take stuff away that you've already approved? $9 billion with a B, $9 billion in a rescission package. So Tuesday night, the bill cleared its first of two procedural hurdles, but only barely. J.D. Vance had to come running over to break the tie after Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitch McConnell broke with the Trump regime and voted alongside Democrats. So now we're in the Voterama stage, which you guys are familiar about when we dealt with the big bullshit bill, this idea of the limitless amendments that can happen to a bill. It's already been approved by the House. It's now in front of the Senate. And just like what happens with the big bullshit bill, if there are changes that are made, which are kind of happening right now, it'll have to go back to the House. But a final Senate vote is expected tonight or tomorrow. So actually, your electeds are still working. But because those Senate changes were made, as we just said, it's going to have to go back to the House, and the House is going to have to vote. So it's not just the Senate that's going to have to be, putting its final fingerprints all over what's happening here. The House is going to have to do that as well. But let's talk about the stakes. What's at stake here? Cuts to PBS and NPR. Those remain in the package as of right now, especially for smaller rural stations. And these smaller rural stations rely heavily on federal grants in order to operate. So some Republicans have actually, remember these backroom deals we were talking about vis-a-vis the big bullshit bill? Senator Mike Rounds, he secured a carve-out to protect tribal radio in South Dakota. But many local PBS affiliates in these smaller rural areas especially, they're going to be completely defunded. And there are some communities that rely upon public radio for not only their information, but for their weather information as well. And we also know what the Trump administration has been doing vis-a-vis climate change, its denial of it, what it's been doing vis-a-vis NOAA, the National Weather Service, etc. Murkowski says, quote, "We're not legislating, we're executing White House direction. That's not how this is supposed to work." Murkowski makes me want to pull my hair out. It's like she finds Jesus at the most inopportune times, and then she decides that somebody else's voice is louder in her head. Meanwhile, Miss Rachel, one of the most trusted voices in childhood education, early childhood ed, is pleading with her followers to stop these cuts. She posted this on Instagram. Thank you, Miss Rachel. Please don't cut PBS Kids. Kids need it. You can trust that their shows are research-based, and that they won't see anything harmful by accident. So just to summarize, you might get a final Senate vote as early as tonight on Wednesday, the 16th. If it does pass the Senate, it's got to go back to the House because it has all the changes that happen to it. If the House fails to pass an identical version by Friday night, the cuts are dead and the $9 billion goes out. So people, remember we were talking at the beginning of the show, positive energy into the universe, put it out there so that PBS, NPR, and all this other money can go where it needs to go. So while the Trump regime continues to try to undermine people's intelligence and doesn't want our kids and others to be able to have the value of public broadcasting, they're also doing some really shady legal shit when it comes to immigration. And again, it's a day ending in Y. But what's the most recent thing? And even I was appalled, and I have thick skin when it comes to the stuff that's happening with this immigration stuff with this administration, and this really rocked my world. According to a piece in The Intercept, ICE attorneys that are advocating on behalf of the Department of ICE, basically, to deport immigrants in mass numbers, they're hiding their faces in court and they're not having their names disclosed. Okay, so it's not just the ICE agents, right, that are kidnapping people off the streets and summarily shipping them out of our country. Now the lawyers are hiding their names in immigration court. Okay, so what's this all about? In a New York immigration court last month, a judge there took the unbelievable step of refusing to identify the ICE lawyer by name who was attempting to deport asylum seekers, citing that lawyer's, quote, privacy. Kid you not. Transparency, right? This is the Transparency Administration. That's why we're releasing the Epstein files. I guess not. So apparently this is not an isolated case. The Intercept is reporting that at least 2 judges have now withheld ICE attorneys' names. Meanwhile, whose names are out there for everyone to see? The immigrants' names. Whose names are out there for everyone to see? Their lawyers' names. So when it comes to transparency and the demand for it, the detained migrants have to give their names. Their lawyers have to give their names. But ICE agents they can mask their face. They don't have to give their names. They don't have to give any disclosures. And now the ICE lawyers get to do it. This is fascism happening in real time. This is an autocratic regime that doesn't have to give you any accountability, Americans, because they don't care. And as far as they're concerned, the rules don't apply to them. The rules don't apply. Let me tell you something as a lawyer, okay? You have something called the record. And the record is created to document what happens in the courtroom, to memorialize. And sometimes you have court reporters, right? Sometimes you have audio recordings that are happening. Sometimes you have both. The record will be incomplete if you don't have the name of the attorney who is prosecuting this or bringing this on behalf of ICE, right? In behalf of the federal government. The record literally will be devoid. Now, what is the judge's solution? The judge in this Intercept piece, according to this Intercept piece, said to the immigrants' lawyers, just drop your email in the chat, because this was like a remote thing via WebEx. Drop your email in the chat and you'll get this person's name. Okay, but what about the public transparency? What about the people needing to know who these people are? Experts and immigration lawyers call this a dangerous erosion of transparency, as you and I just talked about again. So look, let me remind you, immigration courts, even though they say courts, they're not a part of the judiciary. So remember, separation of powers, basic civics, got to remind this administration and the Republicans of this. Immigration courts are not in our judiciary. They're actually a part of the executive branch, which is why this idea that you're going to be getting a National Guard officer who serves as an immigration judge at Alligator Alcatraz, like you think that they're going to sit there and do anything that's going to be untoward against the executive branch? You got to be kidding me. And at this point, I'm going to talk about what's going to happen tomorrow, which is good trouble. There are good trouble protests that are planned across the country. Are you going to be involved in one? I certainly hope you are. I'm also a big fan of saying, I want you to be activated and engaged. And that can be whatever you want to do, protest or otherwise. But tens of thousands of protesters are expected to gather at more than 1,600 locations, folks, nationwide, in another large-scale rally against Donald and the regime. July 17th marks the 5th anniversary of the passing of the amazing civil rights leader and Congressman John Lewis. The term good trouble, coined by John Lewis, is the action of coming together to make peaceful, nonviolent action to challenge injustice and to create meaningful change. You want more info? You got time. It's not till tomorrow. Check out goodtroubleliveson.org to find an event near you. I encourage you to do it. And again, do what's comfortable for you. Don't let other people judge you for your level of engagement and your level of being activated. Any little small thing makes a big difference. Now we're going to shift gears away from politics and we're going to put ourselves on the magic transport ride to a place where there is zero stress. We're going to go to the water park. How many of you love the water park during the summer? Here's today's emotional support moment. So let's just take a brief minute and let's just let it wash away all of today's nonsense.
Amigo, busca jale. Véngase con nosotros, le pagamos por su día. Vamos a ir a cotorrear. En serio, 150 bolas.
¿En serio?
En serio, hermano. Jálese, vámonos, compa. Súbase. Vámonos.
No.
¿Seguro?
¡Véngase!
Jálese. Pásale, amigo, pásale. Este es el jefe del jale.
Aquí están sus uniformes. ¿Saben nadar?
Gracias a la fundación que tenemos de Echándole Ganas, le vamos a dar $1,000 a cada uno de ustedes.
That's how it's supposed to be, right? I mean, I love this. This is incredibly special. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a few of your questions and your comments, and let's check them out because I love interacting always with all of you. So let's see. What's the over under? I don't even know how to pronounce this. So I'm going to try, and I know I'm going to get it wrong. Is it O'Gallagher? What's the over under in days for Jeffrey files being released? Whew. I wouldn't hold your breath. I wouldn't hold your breath on this one, only because, and listen, whatever does come out, it's going to have to be redacted for the protection of the victims. I don't know. You know, I'm going to be very honest, like I always am with you folks. I don't really know how long it's going to take for them to come out because, again, ultimately, the final arbiter on this is going to be Donald. And if he doesn't want it out, it's not going to come out. Although I think if the calls and the pressure keeps on going like it has been right now, I think we'll see it pretty soon. I think we should. You put your comments in there and let me know. Let Mary know. Let all of us know what you think about this because I do think that the transparency is the way to go. Because let's be also, let's do this whataboutism too, right? I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We have congressional investigations over former President Joseph Biden's mental acuity when he was in office, putting aside the hypocrisy of how completely messed up convicted felon Donald Trump is, right? We don't have congressional hearings about his mental acuity. So Congress has time to do all that type of bull caca, but we can't have the transparency of Donald Trump's involvement with a known child pedophile. I mean, we should know. We should know, right? I saw his lips moving. All I heard was Epstein, K-Dub Kelly. Yeah, that's all I heard too. And again, I want to kind of underscore something. I've said this and I'll say it again. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, folks. We can focus on the issue of the Epstein files. We can focus on the hypocrisy. We can focus upon the lies that have been told by Donald and by his cult followers. And we can take some satisfaction in seeing them melting down in their version of a MAGA civil war over a child pedophile. But at the same time, we can also focus on the damage that's being caused to public broadcasting and to our pocketbooks because of tariffs. I mean, we could do all of it. So I agree. All I hear is Epstein, but I'm also hearing high tariffs and a bunch of other drama. And Donna, thank you for being here. If the Epstein files are not valid, why did Queen Elizabeth II strip her son Prince Andrew of all his titles before she passed away? If the royals could not hide, God, Donna, do you want a job working with me? Because you'd be a very good lawyer. So Donna, you have such a great point here. There is so much corroborating evidence that suggests that there is something there. It's not a nothing burger. We know there's something there. How did grand juries return federal and state indictments against people if there's nothing there? How did civil cases get settled if there was nothing there? I mean, there's something there. Why not let us decide the value of it? Why not let us decide what to do with that information? But Donna, an impeccable point. First of all, Ghislaine Maxwell's sitting in prison for it. If there's nothing there, what is she in prison for? And why did the Queen strip her son, Prince Andrew, of his titles? Why was there a scandal? Why did Alan Dershowitz have drama? Why did the royal family have drama? We could go on and on, right? Why did they have drama if there was nothing there? If it was just a hoax? Just a hoax. Do you think that Trump, in Trump 1.0 regime, if all of this was just a hoax, do you think that he wouldn't have exposed it then? If all of it was fake and none of it is true, why is it now happening now? Why is it happening now? And what did Pam Bondi have on her desk if it wasn't the Epstein files? Thank you, Donna, for that. What should our sign say tomorrow? John J. for the climate. You know, John J. for climate. That's a great question. Your signs for tomorrow, I think, should always include the phrase good trouble. And then I think you guys should just use your creativity and let it rip. I'm sure you guys can think of some amazing things. Technically, I think some of the protests are called Good Trouble Lives On, but I think anything that includes the phrase good trouble works. And there's so many people that I'd like to recognize. John, everybody else who's tuning in right now and being so kind. Mary is the epitome of good trouble, is she not? She's relentless and she's devoted to the truth. And she's suffered a lot to be able to make sure that we as Americans get to know the real Donald, and that we get to know what the truth is. So Mary is the walking epitome of good trouble, and I appreciate that. And thank you. Mary Trump Media saying, thank you, Katie. Thanks to all of you. I loved hanging out with you. Please send some good energy so that Mary is recovering soon. I'd love to come back as a guest, as a fill-in host, whatever. And if you guys are interested, I am very grateful that you guys could follow me on YouTube at Katie Phang News, and also at Katie Phang at Substack and other media things. But again, thank you so much for the privilege of your time this evening. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon. And I always say this too: be mad, be outraged, demand accountability, because you know I am.